Hey, we're here with my good friend Abhay Schweitzer with Techne Architecture and Development. Wanted to ask a couple questions. First of all, just wanted to see, how did you end up in San Diego? And tell me a little bit more about your story.
Well, first, thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
It's a pleasure to be here with you. And back in 2006, I was really broke, college student in Michigan, and I really hated snow. I hated the weather. I was dating a woman who is now my wife, and she had just moved out to California. So in January, I came out here, and it was a beautiful day, sunny, 75 degrees. And I said, whatever it takes, I need to get there. So I graduated. I had about enough gas money to get to Indiana. That wasn't going to quite make it. So I borrowed $500, drove across the country, and got to San Diego with nothing. And then from there, started working, worked at a couple of very nice firms for a couple of years. Then quickly realized I wanted to run my own business. I wanted to do more work. I wanted to contribute more than I thought I could in that role. In 2010, I started my firm.
That's awesome. Congratulations. $500 to get across the country. Gas was a little different then.
It was cheaper back then. That's right.
I bet. So tell me a little bit more about your projects and why you specialize in certain types of projects.
So through the years, we have become really good at solving complex problems related to projects, right? And that has attracted a certain type of clients for us. Along with that, we focused on working with developers. Because I saw here in San Diego other architects and developers doing really great work. They were making a lot more money than I seemed to be making. The architecture was amazing, so I thought I need to learn that. And I started seeking out developers, learning from them, doing projects from them, and solving these really complex problems. So a big part of the types of projects that we do are development projects with developer clients. And also we built a nice portfolio of really beautiful custom homes, generally in the coastal areas. Sometimes for developers, sometimes for private clients, but we're really good at that and very proud of those projects as well.
I've seen some of your portfolio, and you've definitely got some sexy projects on
Thank
there
you.
for sure. Would you say there's any particular parts of San Diego that are good for development right now?
So that's a really good question. San Diego is going through a transformation now, where the zoning regulations have changed, other incentives have been brought on the table to really push housing, right? And that has made it so the environment now, from a legislative perspective, is the easiest it has ever been to build and develop multifamily and mixed-use residential projects. So within that, generally in the urbanized areas, next to major corridors, so think of any of the major streets, University Avenue, El Cajon, any of the main streets, along those corridors are incentives to build as much density as you can fit on a property. Mm-hmm. And that's still early on. And we find that only a few developers are tapping into that. But on a property where maybe you could do 10 units 3 years ago, now you can do 50.
Wow.
And knowing how to navigate that and find those properties, particularly having a realtor that can identify within the zones that you're looking for what are the subject properties is key. And the opportunity for me there is one of the best in the entire country right now.
That's interesting. Okay. What would you say, what role would you say that good clients have in making a project better?
Great question. Sometimes the clients don't even know their role if they're a new client, right? So when we start working with someone, we try to determine where are they at? Do they have experience developing? And sometimes they do, and often that's a bad experience with architects. So we need to sort of reteach them a little bit. What is it like to work with a good firm? And sometimes they have no idea, right? But nonetheless, we look for clients that align with how we see things, with our culture, right? We're very dedicated. We're honest about what we do. We solve complex problems. We love challenges. But when we make a mistake, we don't go blaming either, right? We rely on each other to solve that. So if a client has that sort of spirit in them, right? If they want to pioneer, if they want to push the envelope a little bit, if they're not scared to take a risk that's calculated, probably a really good fit for us. But two things, make decisions quickly and pay quickly. That is how you get projects through. That is how you keep everybody happy. And the benefit that you get from that will continue to grow as you develop that relationship with your consultants.
Mm-hmm. It's exciting. I always like pushing the envelope a little bit more too. And something with a challenge is a little more fun than just, your standard cut and dry cookie cutter type thing. So it's always nice to have little obstacles to overcome and work on somebody that knows how to do that with you, for sure.
Often, Mark, clients come to us because they've tried to do a project and they've failed, right? And they have a team that doesn't know what they're doing, or they're running into obstacles with the city. This happens probably on a monthly basis for us. So that's the reputation we've built. When other people can't get it done, because there are obstacles that they couldn't figure out as a team. We go in there almost 100% of the time. We figure it out. We make the project successful. We get it approved. We love having that reputation.
That's awesome. How would you say architects like yourself and realtors, how do they work together? What's like the best way that you see that they work together?
This is critical, and I'll talk about development projects and maybe private projects,
Sure.
right? So from a development project perspective, the realtor is a really key piece of that equation, because you can have an idea about a project, right? Say you want to do 30 units, and maybe you have 3 or 4 neighborhoods that you have in mind. Well, the realtor often is going to have more insight into that neighborhood. So when that local market condition experience and knowledge is really critical, right? Second, a really good realtor will have built relationships in these areas. So then you are potentially looking at deals that may not be available to everybody else, right? And then as you're closing out the acquisition, well, a really good realtor has to be able to close that deal, because it's one thing to get under contract, but as you know, things happen as you're going through due diligence, right? Not every deal stays together and goes to conclusion. So it's really critical. And then on the back end, you want hopefully that same realtor, if you're selling it, if you're building something to sell, to be able to market it effectively, to be able to get you the most for that project, right? To be able to do their job so everybody gets paid as much as possible. So it's really, really critical. And from a private client perspective, often we get this, that somebody wants to buy a home, they know they want to modify it, but the regulations run so deep, right? There are so many questions that need to be answered that it's really difficult without a professional to even look at a property and say, yes, I think I can make it bigger, I think I can remodel it, I think I can build something new, and I know what that's going to look like. I know how long it's going to take. I know how much money it's going to take, right? So by having an architect and realtor collaborate in this sort of fashion, when somebody's looking for a property, well, they can get higher quality answers. They can make better decisions, and often they can find opportunity where other people don't. A property that maybe doesn't look like it has a lot of value because it may have perceived obstacles, right? If there's a path to solve those, now the realtor gets more value because they're showing properties that actually qualify for that client, and the client is potentially getting something that is even greater than what they imagined. So it's really critical. We like to get involved as early on as possible. When they're thinking about an area, get the architect and the realtor together. Let's find out what the client needs, and then as a team, let's use each team's expertise to get to that finish line.
Yeah, if I could segue that into another question, actually, as a realtor myself, and with the low inventory that we have right now, one thing that I'm seeing more and more often is because there's such a scarcity in inventory, people are now starting to look to acquire land. Yes. And when you do projects from the ground up regularly, when someone is looking at land, what is the usual timeline to expect from going into escrow to actually being able to close on the land and then build and have your home that you can move into?
Very good question. And we're seeing that too. We're seeing land sort of have more movement right now, right? More people are maybe interested in looking at that and exploring it. So in San Diego County, let's go as a whole, and within all the cities in it, right? There are 2 types of permitting process, okay? One is called discretionary, and I don't need to explain exactly what that is, but that means that before you can build a project, you need a planning approval or something similar before. If you're by the coast, it's a coastal development permit. If you're in other areas, it could be called something else, right? That's one category. In that category, where you have multiple approval steps before you can build, not just the building permit, it could take 2 years. If it's a very complex house, let's say somebody's building a 15,000 square foot house that's very custom, that could be a 3-year process, right? If you're building in areas that don't require this discretionary approval, you could have your building permit in as little as 6 months, and then the construction another 6 to 9 months. So on the low end, you're looking at about 12 months if it goes very fast, as little as 12 months, but let's say 12 months to a year and a half, and then on the longer one, about 3 years. What we see often is people get into that, and then their team is not responsive, the consultants aren't coordinated, they are not getting responses back to the city, and that process drags. And you've probably heard it, people are scared of these things, right? They're scared of these projects because they have had bad experiences, they've heard about bad experiences, but most of that comes from a team that is not well coordinated or capable or qualified to execute those projects.
I think it's really important to set up those expectations up front too, because a lot of clients that are coming to us with the intentions of just purchasing a a piece of land and having a home built on it within 6 months. It's unfortunately a little far-fetched, and patience is pretty key when you're looking to do a project like that. So I think having somebody like yourself and a team that's experienced is crucial in doing something like that. So
absolutely, and setting the expectation early is really critical, right? Mm-hmm. Because you can say, look, it's going to take 2 years, right? And you have a plan for that. You're not just pulling that number out of the air, right? Mm-hmm. If it can go faster, amazing. But the worst is when they think it's going to take 6 months and it takes 2 years. Mm-hmm. There's almost never a happy ending at the end of that story. And I think we try to be real with the client. We're going to get them the answer. It doesn't mean they'll like it, but it's imperative that you're honest all the time and that you're giving them the best data that's available so the expectations are set, right? Then that person can make the call. Do you want to pursue it or not? Right?
100%. Transparency is always key. That's been one of my models for a long, long time. But in any case, Abhay, pleasure to have you.
Thank
always
you so
enjoy
much.
chatting with you. Thanks for tuning in. And if you have any further questions, you can reach out to myself or Abhay here. We're happy to help.